The galaxy had never known such unity. From the outer rim to the ancient core worlds, fleets of warships gathered like storms across the stars. Hundreds of species, once enemies, now stood side by side, united by a single cause: erase Earth. On the central world of the Galactic Council, celebrations filled the air. Alien voices shouted in triumph. Banners waved in 100 different languages, and massive holoscreens projected the same message across every city. Today, the threat of humanity ends. In the Grand Council chamber, the rulers of the great empires sat in a circle of light. Each alien leader rose in turn, giving speeches that echoed through the galaxy. They are too dangerous to exist. They are unstable. They are monsters in disguise. Their extinction ensures our survival. Applause followed each declaration. It was not the applause of joy. It was the applause of relief. For centuries, whispers of humanity had haunted the galaxy. Whispers of their strange resilience, their stubborn survival against impossible odds, their ability to turn disaster into victory. But those whispers had become legends, and legends could be silenced. Now the fleets had gathered, tens of thousands of ships, bristling with weapons powerful enough to tear continents apart. All converged on a single blue world at the edge of the Orion Arm. Earth, from orbit. Alien commanders gazed down at the planet with cold eyes. They expected to see chaos, panic, and fear. But Earth's skies were calm. Cities still glowed with lights. Oceans still shimmered under the sun. And no defense fleets rose to meet them. "Strange," whispered Admiral Relthar of the Veari Dominion, his scaled fingers drumming against the armrest of his command throne. "The humans know we are here. They see our fleets. Why do they not resist?" A nearby officer hissed in amusement. "Perhaps the myths were lies, Admiral. Perhaps humanity is weaker than we thought." Relthar narrowed his eyes. The humans had fought wars before, long, bloody wars, where they were always outnumbered. Yet they never surrendered. To face no resistance now was unsettling. Still, the orders were clear. The Council had spoken. The genocide must begin. Back on the Council world, alien citizens filled the plazas, watching live broadcasts of the fleets around Earth. Children of dozens of species pointed at the holograms of ships, cheering as if this were a festival. Fireworks painted alien skies, and music rang out through alien streets. "This is history," one commentator announced. "The galaxy stands united as one. Never again will humanity threaten our peace." In taverns and halls, soldiers drank to their future victory. Scientists predicted that within hours, Earth's surface would be reduced to molten ash. Politicians promised a new age of peace, free of the shadow of humanity. Everywhere, joy. Everywhere, celebration. Everywhere. Except Earth. In orbit, alien fleets waited for a response. None came. No transmissions, no messages of surrender, no attempt to negotiate. The planet below remained quiet. Some aliens laughed. "The humans are cowards," they said. "They know resistance is hopeless." Others were cautious. "Perhaps this is a trick. Perhaps they are waiting." But as the hours dragged on, silence remained. Humanity, so noisy, so passionate, so defiant, remained utterly still, and the stillness was worse than open defiance. Admiral Relthar felt it gnawing at him. The humans were never silent. Even in defeat they shouted. Even when crushed they bit back. So why now, when their extinction was at hand, did they say nothing? The signal was given. From thousands of ships, weapons came alive. Energy cannons hummed, missile bays opened, orbital bombardment arrays glowed with deadly light. Targeting computers locked onto cities, military bases, and power grids across Earth. In command centers across the fleet, countdowns began. 10, 9, 8. Alien officers grinned as they watched targeting displays. Within moments, Earth would be fire and rubble. 7, 6, 5. Billions of civilians across the galaxy watched the broadcast. Holding their breath, 4, 3, 2. Relthar leaned forward, his scaled hand tightening into a fist. 1. The weapons charged. But something was wrong. Sensors flared with interference. Targeting computers glitched, static filling their displays. Alarms rang out across dozens of bridges. Report, Bagdrelthar. Admiral, the planet is interfering with our systems. Impossible. Earth does not possess technology to... The officer froze. His eyes widened. His voice dropped to a whisper. Admiral, something is moving. Beneath the crust, even before the fleets launched, alien spies had whispered of strange things on Earth. They spoke of mountains that hummed with hidden power, of oceans that glowed faintly at night, of tunnels so deep no probe returned. The spies had warned, do not believe Earth is defenseless. Do not believe humanity is weak, but the Council had dismissed them. Paranoid nonsense. Now, as sensors screamed and the ground itself shifted, those whispers no longer seemed like fantasy. On Earth's surface, nothing changed. Cities remained quiet. Oceans shimmered under the sunlight. But deep beneath mountains, oceans, and deserts, something stirred. Seismic tremors shook the ground. Entire mountain ranges quivered as if the planet itself was waking. Rivers rippled, skyscrapers shuddered, animals fled into the wilds. The alien fleet scrambled to understand what was happening. Report! What is causing the tremors? We detect massive structures, artificial buried kilometers beneath the surface. Structures? What kind of structures? I do not know, Admiral. They are moving. The word spread like wildfire across the fleets. Earth was not still. Earth was not silent. Earth was moving. For the first time in decades, Admiral Relthar felt fear. True fear. The humans had said nothing, done nothing. They had simply waited. Waited for the fleets to come. Waited for the first strike to fall. And now, with their world seconds from destruction, something ancient and hidden beneath their feet was rising. Relthar's scales prickled. The air on his ship felt cold. He whispered the words his soldiers dared not say aloud. What if the myths were true? The countdown reached 0. Alien fleets prepared to fire. Weapons locked on Earth, but then every sensor flared white. Every targeting display went blind. Every system screamed with warnings. Across the surface, from mountains and oceans, deep rumbles grew into roars. The planet itself seemed alive. Admiral Relthar's final words before the feed cut off were broadcast across the galaxy. Movement. Beneath the crust, something is coming. The broadcast ended in static, and for the first time in living memory, the galaxy fell silent. The fleets that surrounded Earth waited in silence. They had expected a swift victory, an easy genocide carried out in minutes. Instead, they watched as their targeting systems screamed with errors, and seismic alarms rolled through their ships. From orbit, Earth looked calm, yet their sensors told a different story. The planet was alive with motion, as if something vast and hidden beneath its surface had begun to stir. Alien officers whispered to one another in fear. Reports came in from dozens of vessels. There were structures buried under mountains. There were signals radiating from beneath oceans. Some described energy sources older than any known technology. None of it made sense. Earth was supposed to be primitive compared to the great empires of the stars. And yet, the planet moved as if it had been waiting for this moment. Admiral Relthar ordered closer scans. His ships descended into low orbit, pulling data from the crust of the Earth. What they found shook even the most hardened commanders. Miles beneath the continents lay colossal vaults, vast caverns carved with impossible precision. Energy signatures pulsed from them, growing stronger with every second. The readings were so powerful that ships began to experience interference just by observing. Then the ground split. Mountains that had stood for millions of years cracked open as metal spires rose into the air. Oceans frothed and boiled as titanic shapes surfaced, covered in layers of rust and stone, as if they had slept for ages. Deserts collapsed into chasms that revealed endless tunnels, lined with glowing veins of light. The fleets had gathered to wipe Earth from existence, but now they were staring at a planet shedding its disguise. One alien commander shouted across the comms, demanding answers. His voice shook as he reported what he saw. a warship larger than any recorded vessel, rising from beneath the Pacific Ocean. Its hull was dark, so black it seemed to swallow the starlight itself. Water cascaded from its massive form as it broke through the waves, stretching upward like a tower of steel and shadow. The ship did not fire. It did not even power its visible weapons. Yet its presence was suffocating. Every scanner locked onto it reported the same impossible result: unreadable. No weapon in the fleets could properly target it. No probe could measure its mass. It was as if the ship existed outside of the laws of physics the galaxy understood. On the Council world, the celebrations faltered. The live broadcast, which had been showing Earth's destruction, now showed the rising of something no one could explain. Crowds that had been cheering fell silent. Politicians froze mid-speech. The joy of genocide turned into a quiet unease. Back in orbit, Admiral Relthar gripped the edge of his command chair. He had studied the legends. Long ago, whispers claimed that humans had built machines they themselves feared to use. Weapons designed not for war, but for survival against extinction. For centuries, those whispers had been dismissed as myths. But myths did not rise from beneath oceans. The massive warship ascended into the sky, breaking through storm clouds, and drifted toward orbit. Its engines emitted no flame, no heat. It moved silently, like a predator gliding through water. Smaller alien ships scrambled to intercept, surrounding it in formation. They sent warnings, threats, demands. The ship gave no answer. Then a signal spread across every channel at once. A single voice, mechanical yet heavy, with an echo of humanity, spoke in a language all could understand. Protocol initiated. Vaults opened. Defense awakened. The words chilled every commander who heard them. This was no desperate human cry for help. It was an announcement. A warning. Relthar demanded his fleets fire immediately. Thousands of cannons lit up, preparing to unleash destruction upon the rising vessel. But just before the order was carried out, every ship's targeting display went black again. The mysterious warship released a pulse, silent, invisible, unstoppable. Systems rebooted, power grids collapsed, weapons refused to fire. An entire genocide fleet paralyzed. The alien crews panicked, shouting over comms. They were trained to fight enemies with numbers, with weapons, with predictable tactics. But what they faced now was beyond war. It was something designed to end wars before they began. As the warship settled into orbit, its shadow fell across dozens of alien vessels. It still did not fire. It did not need to. The message was clear. Earth had not been defenseless. Earth had been hiding. Far below, in the depths of Earth's crust, other vaults stirred. Massive underground hangars powered on, filling with light after centuries of silence. Machines the size of cities rumbled awake, their engines shaking the ground. Deep under polar ice, silhouettes moved beneath frozen layers, breaking free like beasts escaping their cages. Humanity had been quiet, but not weak. They had built their survival in secret, hidden beneath the very soil of their homeworld. The fleets had come to erase them, and in doing so had unlocked what should have remained buried. The Alien Council received the latest reports, and chaos erupted. Some demanded retreat. Others insisted on pressing the attack, believing Earth's awakening was nothing but illusion and bluster. But none could ignore the terror in the eyes of the admirals reporting from orbit. The council chambers echoed with one question, repeated again and again. What did we wake? In orbit, Admiral Relthar stared at the human warship, its black hull reflecting nothing, its silence heavier than any weapon. His officers begged for orders. He gave none. For the first time in his life, he did not know whether he was looking at a ship or a monster born of human will, and then the warship moved. Slowly, deliberately, it turned to face the genocide fleet. Lights along its hull began to glow, one after another, like the eyes of something vast and ancient opening at last. Every alien heart in the fleet froze, and still, the ship did not fire. It only sent out a single new transmission, echoing across the stars. Now, you face humanity. The silence that followed was worse than any explosion. The fleets around Earth were silent. Thousands of alien warships hovered above the blue planet, their weapons primed yet useless. The black vessel that had risen from Earth's oceans now drifted in orbit, larger and more terrifying than anything the galaxy had ever seen. Its hull reflected no light, no heat, no energy signature that scanners could track. To look upon it was to stare into a void shaped like a warship. Admiral Relthar sat rigid in his command throne, his scaled hands trembling. His officers looked to him for orders, but he gave none. Every instinct screamed at him to retreat, yet retreat was impossible. The Council demanded victory. Billions of beings across the galaxy were watching the live broadcast. The fleets had gathered to erase humanity, and they would not accept hesitation. Still, Relthar hesitated. The black warship remained motionless, drifting like a predator studying its prey. Then it spoke. Her voice, deep and metallic, echoed across every channel of every fleet. It was not human, yet not entirely machine. It was something in between: protocol, extinction reversal, authorization, humanity. The words froze, every commander in place. For a moment the galaxy held its breath. Then Relthar shouted the only command he could think of: "Fire! Fire everything!" The fleets obeyed. Thousands of beams of plasma, particle cannons, rail slugs, and missile swarms streaked through space. The combined might of dozens of empires lit up the void with blinding fury. For seconds, space itself seemed to tear apart under the storm of weapons fire. Admirals screamed triumph, soldiers roared in anger. The black ship was engulfed in light, buried beneath firepower that could shatter moons. When the storm faded, silence followed. The warship was still there, untouched. Not a scratch marked its hull. Alien commanders shouted in disbelief. Weapons recalibrated, firing again and again. But nothing worked. The black ship's hull drank in every attack as if the weapons of the galaxy were nothing more than sparks on steel. Then, without warning, the ship answered. It moved. Not fast, not with the thruster burns the fleets knew, but with impossible speed. One moment it was ahead of them, the next it was in their center, weaving through the fleets without effort. Its weapons came alive, beams of pure darkness lanced outward, silent and cold. They did not explode. They did not burn. They simply erased. Where the beams touched, ships vanished, leaving nothing but drifting debris. Entire squadrons disappeared in seconds, reduced to empty space where once thousands of lives had existed. Panic erupted. Crews screamed, officers shouted, admirals barked desperate orders to regroup. But the black ship cut through them like a shadow, slicing through fire. It did not hesitate, did not miss, did not even slow. On the Council world, the live broadcast turned from celebration to horror. Crowds that had cheered humanity's destruction now watched in silence as their fleets burned. Politicians stared with pale faces, unable to comprehend what they were seeing. Children cried as their parents turned away from the screens. In orbit, Relthar felt his heart pound as ships vanished around him. He had commanded fleets for decades, had faced wars, uprisings, and rebellions, but never had he seen such destruction delivered with such ease. He whispered the thought none of his officers dared to speak aloud. This is no ship. This is vengeance. Within minutes, half the genocide fleet was gone. Entire battle groups erased, their wreckage drifting in silent orbits. The survivors broke formation, scattering in every direction, desperate to escape. Admirals screamed for retreat, their voices drowned out by the cries of their dying fleets. And then, as suddenly as it had begun, the slaughter stopped. The black warship powered down its weapons. Its lights dimmed. It drifted once more in silence, its void-like hull looming over the survivors. It did not pursue. It did not finish the kill. Instead, it transmitted a final message, a voice deeper now, filled with something that might have been human rage, echoed across every ship, every channel, every world that watched the broadcast. You came to erase us. You came to destroy our world. Now you face the real monsters. The words struck like thunder. Across the galaxy, those who had laughed at humanity's silence now trembled. Those who had cheered for their extinction now whispered prayers. The council chambers erupted in chaos as rulers shouted at one another, demanding answers no one had. In orbit, the survivors fled. Ships abandoned formation, retreating at full speed into the void. Some did not even wait for orders. They ran, leaving comrades behind, desperate to escape the gaze of the black warship. Admiral Relthar stayed behind, frozen in his command throne. He could not retreat, not yet. His eyes locked onto the warship as it loomed above Earth, silent and motionless. He knew what it was now. It was not a legend. It was not a myth, it was the truth. Humanity had built monsters not to conquer, but to survive. Monsters that slept beneath their world, waiting for the day they were needed again. And now, because the galaxy had tried to erase them, the monsters had awakened, Relthar whispered to himself, though his crew heard the words. The galaxy has doomed itself. The black warship turned slowly, its hull gleaming faintly with impossible light. It did not chase the fleeing fleets. It did not finish the battle. It only lingered, watching as if to say, this was only the beginning. The council broadcast ended in chaos. Empires sent urgent messages demanding answers. Fear spread faster than any fleet could travel. For centuries, the galaxy had believed humanity weak. Now they had seen the truth. And deep beneath Earth, in vaults not yet opened, more shadows stirred. The galaxy had never known true silence until that moment. Every corner of space, every broadcast channel, every council hall went quiet as news spread like wildfire. The fleet that had once been so confident, so certain of Earth's destruction, now lay scattered across the void. Wreckage drifted in burning fields of twisted steel, the proud banners of dozens of species reduced to ash. Those who survived whispered in terror, their voices shaking as they tried to describe what they had seen. Some called it a weapon, others a beast, but all agreed on one thing: humanity was not weak. Humanity was something far worse. On council worlds far from Earth, leaders of great empires sat in their chambers, their scales, fur or chitin, prickling with unease. For centuries, they had told their people that humans were fragile, broken, unworthy of the stars. They said humanity's collapse was inevitable, that the myths of Earth's soldiers and their wars were exaggerated tales meant to frighten children. Yet now the impossible had happened. Entire fleets vanished in hours, their greatest warships torn apart as though the void itself had turned against them. No one could explain how. No one wanted to, but fear had already begun to spread. On one station orbiting the twin suns of Jalian Prime, broadcasts replayed shaky fragments of the battle. A grainy image showed something rising from Earth's surface, something massive and alive with fire. Alien newscasters spoke in rushed tones, their voices betraying panic as they warned of a human awakening. Ships abandoned the trade routes leading to Sol. Traders whispered rumors to each other in dark corners of ports. Some claimed Earth had forged a weapon from the core of their planet. Others swore they had seen a fleet that moved like ghosts, tearing apart armadas with impossible precision. No rumor was too wild, because every version felt terrifying enough to be true. For the first time in centuries, alien children asked their parents if the human stories were real. Parents had no answer. The bedtime tales of predators who fought wars with teeth and fire suddenly seemed less like legends, and more like memories of something the galaxy had tried to bury. Meanwhile, the survivors of the failed genocide fleet limped back to their home systems. Many were too broken to speak. The few who did speak described horrors no one wanted to believe: ships cut open from within, weapons fired back upon their own masters, shadows moving faster than light, and human voices whispering through the static of their comms. One commander, barely alive, muttered the same words again and again before his heart failed. "They're awake. The monsters are awake." Panic began to boil into anger. Some council members demanded immediate retaliation. They shouted that humanity must be ended before their power grew. But others, shaking with fear, argued that it was already too late. The galaxy had underestimated them once. What would another attack bring? What if the humans were not just defending, What if they had plans of their own? In the shadows of the council chambers, smaller species whispered to one another. Many had been forced to send ships to the genocide fleet. Now those species mourned their dead and cursed the council for provoking humanity at all. Rebellion brewed in quiet hearts, the thought growing stronger. If humanity truly has returned, perhaps we need them more than we fear them. Back on Earth, the silence continued. No messages, no threats, no words of triumph. The planet did not speak. The wreckage of the alien fleet drifted near its orbit like a warning, a graveyard visible to all who dared approach. Alien observers stationed on distant moons watched with trembling hands, their sensors locked on Earth's surface. The strange energy readings beneath the crust were growing stronger, pulsing like a heartbeat. Something was moving down there. Something alive across the stars. Fear turned into paranoia. Armies were recalled. Borders were locked down. Entire sectors of space were abandoned, left empty in case humanity's reach extended farther than anyone dared imagine. And in every dark chamber, every meeting, every hushed whisper between rulers, one question spread like poison. What have we awoken? The galaxy had thought it was strong enough to erase humanity. Instead, it now trembled, waiting for the next move, waiting for the monsters to step into the light. And then the waiting ended. On a forgotten relay station orbiting the barren world of Kelros, a signal burst through the silence. It was faint, coded in ancient human language, yet unmistakable. The station's operators stared in disbelief as they translated the message. It was not a threat. It was not a warning. It was a declaration. And as the words echoed across the stars, the galaxy realized the nightmare had only just begun. The galaxy thought the first awakening was the end of their nightmare. But they were wrong. What they had seen, the destruction of fleets, the silence of Earth, the strange power rising from beneath its crust, was only the beginning. The true storm had not yet broken. Far below the surface of Earth, deeper than any alien sensor could fully scan, something ancient stirred. Entire continents shuddered as underground vaults long buried under stone and molten rock began to shift. They were not just bunkers, not just weapons, but something far stranger. Machines that had slept for ages began to hum, their voices low and thunderous, shaking through the bones of the planet. The aliens who monitored Earth's surface from distant orbits were the first to notice. At first, they thought it was seismic activity, a harmless earthquake. But then their sensors registered patterns, rhythms, pulses that were too precise, too controlled to be nature. Someone or something was sending signals. They weren't random. They were organized. On the Galactic Council's core world, panic and argument tore through the Grand Chamber. Representatives of hundreds of species shouted over each other, demanding answers. The recordings of the new pulses were played aloud, and the low, rolling sound made even the bravest among them shift uncomfortably. Some demanded immediate mobilization, others begged for retreat. For the first time in history, no one agreed on anything, except one truth: humanity was no longer silent. Meanwhile, survivors from the first failed assault fleet began to crack under the weight of what they had seen. In detention cells and recovery stations, broken commanders whispered about what lay under Earth. One described seeing cracks of light in the planet's crust, as if the world itself was bleeding fire. Another swore he heard voices on the comms that did not belong to any living crew. They spoke in human tongues, cold and calm, as if welcoming the fleet into its grave. Yet still, no official word came from Earth, no declaration of war. No threat, no plea, only silence, except for the pulsing signals, growing louder by the hour. The people of the galaxy began to change. Citizens who once cheered for humanity's destruction now trembled in fear. Traders abandoned routes anywhere near Sol. Miners in nearby systems refused to work. Even the hardened mercenaries and bounty hunters spoke in hushed tones when Earth was mentioned. The myths of humanity's wars returned with vengeance. Stories of the old days when humans had broken empires and toppled kings. Now those old tales no longer seemed like myths. Then came the Second Awakening, On the 24th rotation after the failed genocide, Earth's crust split open in several places. Towers of light erupted into the skies, massive pillars of burning energy that pierced through the clouds. They were not weapons, not yet, but beacons. Ancient human technology, designed in an age so far past that even Earth's enemies had forgotten it. The towers pulsed in unison, and the signals grew stronger. Across the stars, those who intercepted the broadcasts trembled. The signals were now unmistakable. They carried fragments of language, encoded with precision. Some were in old Earth dialects, others were in newer galactic codes. And though none of the messages were fully clear, one truth became undeniable. The humans were waking their world itself. The council chamber fell into chaos. One faction demanded a preemptive strike before the awakening was complete, insisting that if they waited any longer, the galaxy would face extinction. Another faction refused, terrified that striking now would trigger something far worse. The arguments nearly turned to violence as species that had once stood united against Earth now accused each other of cowardice, betrayal, or madness. Out among the border systems, refugees poured in from colonies near Sol. They spoke of shadows in space, of ships moving without heat signatures or engine trails. They claimed to see human vessels, black as night, silent as ghosts, moving between the stars. Many were dismissed as hallucinations, the ravings of frightened minds. But others began to wonder, were the ships real? Were they scouts of the monsters that were about to awaken? And then, without warning, a single transmission broke through the noise. Clear, sharp, undeniable, it was a voice, human, calm, cold, and steady. You tried to erase us. Instead, you will see what you have awoken. The transmission ended as quickly as it began, but the damage was done. Billions across the galaxy heard it. Fear became terror. Entire planets fell into panic. Some species began to prepare defenses. Others prayed to whatever gods they still believed in. And some, secretly, began to wonder if siding with humanity was the only way to survive what was coming. Back on Earth, the towers of light pulsed faster. The ground split wider. Machines that had not moved in 10,000 years roared back to life. Humanity had not just survived. Humanity was summoning something greater. The galaxy realized the truth far too late. The first awakening had been terrible, but the second was only just beginning. And as the stars themselves seemed to tremble, every living soul asked the same question. What will happen when the monsters fully rise? The stars themselves seemed to hold their breath as the second awakening spread across Earth. The towers of light still pulsed, their rhythm like a beating heart. But now something else stirred in the shadows. For the first time, the galaxy would see what humanity had truly buried. Not myths, not stories, monsters of flesh and steel. On the barren moons around Sol, alien observers fixed their trembling sensors toward the planet. At first, they thought the images were distortions, tricks of heat and magnetics. Then the signals grew clearer. Vast shapes rose from beneath oceans, their forms breaking through the waves in thunderous sprays. The seas themselves seemed to recoil as the machines surfaced, colossal war forms that looked alive. They were shaped like ships, yet they breathed. Their hulls flexed like muscle, their eyes burned with artificial fire. From beneath mountains, other forms emerged. Giants, walking titans, plated in armor that gleamed with age, yet pulsed with strange life. Their limbs moved with the weight of mountains, and their steps sent shockwaves through valleys. Some bore weapons fused into their frames. Others carried massive blades that shimmered like lightning, and they were not alone. The machines were not just machines, they carried with them living forms, humans, thousands of them, climbing from vaults. Their faces grim, their eyes filled with a light the galaxy had not seen in ages. They were not the weak, fragile beings the galaxy expected. These were humans bred for war, preserved in stasis, waiting for this moment. Their armor was fused into their skin, their weapons grafted into their hands. They were monsters of flesh and steel. Soldiers of an ancient age, when Earth had once conquered and burned entire empires. The alien watchers who recorded the scene could not even breathe as they transmitted the images back to their councils. One commander whispered, his voice breaking, "They didn't just build weapons. They became them." Panic tore through the galaxy faster than light. The recordings spread across 1,000 systems within hours. Citizens screamed in the streets. Armies faltered. Some empires prepared fleets, others demanded peace, but all trembled. Because no one had believed the old legends when they spoke of humanity merging with their machines, of warriors who fought like gods. Now those legends stood, walking once more upon the soil of Earth. On the Galactic Council's core world, the chamber was chaos. The images of the Titans played again and again on the grand screens, machines rising from oceans, soldiers marching in perfect silence, their steel and flesh bound as one. The rulers who had once declared genocide against humanity now shouted in terror. Some demanded retreat, others cried for unconditional surrender. But the proudest voices still screamed for war, insisting that humanity must fall before their power spread. And yet, no one volunteered to lead the attack, for in every shadowed corner, whispers grew. What if the humans had already spread? What if this was not their only vault? The truth was worse than whispers. On a mining colony in the far reaches of the galaxy, the ground shook and a buried vault opened. On a gas giant's moon, forgotten ruins began to glow. Across the stars, in places where humanity had once tread, other vaults stirred. It was no longer just Earth that was awakening. It was every corner of space where humanity had left their mark. Back on Earth, the Titans marched toward the cities. Their human commanders climbed to their stations, linking with the machines through nerves, through thought. The bond was seamless, terrifying, beautiful. These were not pilots. They were one with the machines. Together, they moved as monsters that no fleet could hope to match. At last, Earth spoke again. Another transmission burned through the void, stronger, colder than the first. "You feared our past. You tried to erase us. Now you will see why." The message ended, but the images remained, flesh and steel rising together, a storm that could not be stopped. The galaxy had thought the monsters were myths. But now, those myths were awake and they were hungry, and in the silence that followed, every world knew the truth. This was no longer a war of survival. It was the beginning of something far worse. The monsters of flesh and steel were not defending. They were preparing to march. The galaxy had spent centuries believing itself untouchable. Empires rose and fell, wars burned and faded, but the Council always remained. It was the center of power, the balance that held the stars together. Yet now, in the wake of Earth's second awakening, that balance shattered. The fear of humanity spread faster than any fleet. It did not march with armies, not yet. It moved with whispers, with panic, with the slow crumbling of order. The first to break were the smaller empires, those forced by the Council to join the genocide fleet. Their ships never returned. Their people saw the images of Earth's monsters, colossal titans of steel, soldiers fused with living machines, and they understood the truth. They had been used. The Council had ordered their destruction, and humanity had punished them all the same. Now their leaders stood before furious populations, their lies exposed. Riots tore through their streets. Soldiers deserted their posts. Some worlds declared independence overnight, vowing never again to serve the Council's commands. The collapse spread upward. Trade routes fell silent as merchants abandoned their stations. Convoys vanished, not by human hands but by chaos itself. With no faith in the Council, planets refused to pay tribute. Whole sectors turned inward, barricading themselves, cutting ties with allies who might bring humanity's wrath. Fear poisoned every treaty, every promise, and the Council. It broke apart in front of the galaxy's eyes. The chamber, that had once echoed with proud voices, now rang with shrieks of accusation. Representatives hurled insults across the floor, their claws and mandibles snapping, their scales bristling. Some demanded another fleet to strike Earth before the monsters fully awoke. Others screamed that the war was already lost and begged for surrender. Yet no one dared send ships. No commander volunteered. No empire wanted to be the first to burn. Across the stars, survivors of the first genocide fleet spread their stories. Their voices were weak, broken, but their words carried more weight than any proclamation. They spoke of ships that moved like shadows, of voices whispering through the static, of titans walking from the seas. One survivor, delirious with fear, shouted before a broadcast audience, "You fools! You haven't fought them. You've only woken them. They are not defending Earth, they are rising. And when they finish rising, there will be nothing left of us." His words set fire to entire worlds. Populations rioted, screaming at their rulers to surrender before it was too late. Some rulers tried to hold on to their power by silencing the cries, but executions and arrests only fueled rebellion. Colonies burned. Borders collapsed. Armies that once marched proudly for the Council now turned on their masters. The galaxy was breaking under its own fear, and still, humanity remained silent. No fleets left Earth, no armies marched beyond Sul. The monsters of flesh and steel stood waiting, their shadows long across the skies of their reborn world. Their silence was more terrifying than any weapon, because the galaxy knew it was not mercy. It was patience, yet in that silence the galaxy's fractures grew deeper. A great empire on the Council's eastern rim declared neutrality, swearing they would never again raise a hand against Earth. Another empire fell into civil war as half its people demanded alliance with humanity, while the other half cried for resistance. In the farthest reaches, smaller worlds sent secret transmissions toward Sol, not of defiance, but of loyalty. They begged for protection, for forgiveness, for a place at humanity's side when the reckoning came. The Council tried to silence these betrayals, but their words had no power anymore. Every ruler knew the truth. The age of the Council was ending. The galaxy's future no longer belonged to them. It belonged to the monsters they had awakened, and then, as if to drive the final blade into the heart of the collapsing order, a new signal burst across the stars. This time, it was not a whisper. It was not faint. It was thunderous, undeniable, a voice that spoke in every known language at once. "Your empires mean nothing. Your fleets mean nothing. You sought to erase us. Instead, you erased yourselves. The age of cowards is over. The age of monsters has returned." The broadcast ended, but its echo shook every world. Empires crumbled, councils fractured, and across the void, the galaxy finally understood. The collapse had begun, and there was no turning back. The galaxy had believed the collapse of empires was the end, but it was only the shadow before the storm. When Earth finally moved, the stars themselves seemed to recoil. The silence that had haunted the galaxy for weeks broke, not with whispers, not with warnings, but with the roar of monsters the universe had tried to bury. It began with the sky over Sul, the ancient towers of light, which had pulsed like a heartbeat, flared once more. Oceans boiled as titans of steel and flesh marched from the waves. Mountains split open, releasing armies sealed in vaults for millennia. The ground trembled as war machines rose, their frames fusing with the humans who stepped into them, bonding with muscle, bone, and thought. They were not soldiers. They were not machines. They were the monsters the galaxy had feared and denied since the old wars. Alien eyes watched in horror as the first of them stepped beyond Earth. Vast shapes cut through the void, ships unlike anything seen before. They moved without engines, drifting silently, as if space itself bent to their will. Their hulls were jagged, alive with scars from battles fought in ages past. Some whispered they were not ships at all, but living predators that fed on starlight. The Galactic Council, what little remained of it, scrambled to rally the last of their fleets. They threw together what ships they could from shattered empires and desperate allies. The largest armada in living memory assembled, surrounding the borders of Sol. Commanders shouted that they would hold the line, that humanity would not escape its prison. Their speeches were hollow, their eyes wide with dread. Then the humans struck. The monsters of flesh and steel did not march in chaos. They moved with perfect silence, perfect precision. The first human fleet erupted from Sol like a storm, and the Council's ships broke in minutes. Beams of light carved through cruisers. Titans leapt from vessels, tearing enemy ships apart with their bare hands, their voices echoing across comms in cold, steady tones. You tried to erase us. Now we erase you. The galaxy had seen war. It had seen fleets clash and planets burn. But this was different. This was not war. This was slaughter. Whole empires collapsed in hours as their fleets fell. Worlds surrendered without firing a shot, broadcasting pleas into the void. We yield. Spare us. But Earth gave no answer. Humanity moved past them, relentless, their silence heavier than any reply. On distant worlds, civilians watched their skies burn as human warforms descended. They expected invasion, enslavement, the horrors they themselves had once inflicted. Instead, the humans destroyed only the strongholds of the Council, leaving cities untouched. They tore down palaces, silenced rulers, and left the people free. To many, it was not conquest, it was liberation. Yet the liberation came with a cost, a whispered understanding that the monsters did not rule with kindness, but with the promise of fear. Across the stars, the truth became undeniable. Humanity had returned, but not as prey, not as victims, not even as conquerors. They had returned as the monsters every child's tale had warned about. The ones who burned empires when crossed. The ones who rose from silence when threatened. The ones who could not be erased. On the last night of the Council's reign, as the remnants of its fleet smoldered in the void, a single broadcast echoed across every channel, every frequency, every corner of the galaxy. It was the voice of humanity, calm, steady, unshakable. You called us dangerous. You were right. You called us monsters. You were right. You tried to erase us, and now you meet the real monsters. The transmission ended, and for the first time in galactic history, there was no council, no empire, no fleet to answer back. Only silence. The silence of a galaxy that finally understood the truth. The monsters had awakened, and they were human.